The silence in the briefing room wasn't ordinary quiet. It was the kind that follows a detonation. Heavy, ringing, absolute. 43 Special Operations officers stood motionless, hands raised in salute, their eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my chest tight. My sister stood frozen 3 feet away, her champagne flute tilted at a dangerous angle, liquid threatening to spill. Her mouth had formed a small O of shock. Behind her, my brother-in-law, newly promoted to major, looked like someone had punched him in the solar plexus. The 3-star general holding the citation had gone quiet mid-sentence, waiting. The paper trembled slightly in his weathered hands. I kept my own hand steady, returning the salute, even though I wore civilian clothes and hadn't been called by my rank in 2 years. Some things you don't forget. Some respects you don't refuse. Let me back up. The invitation arrived on a Thursday, forwarded through my old Navy email address that I checked maybe twice a year. Major David Chen's promotion ceremony, Joint Special Operations Command HQ, Fort Bragg. Family welcome. No personal note. No hope you can make it. Just the formal details and a +1 option. I called my sister Victoria that evening. Got David's invitation. Are you sure you want me there? Why wouldn't I? Her voice carried that familiar edge of impatience. Your family. Technically. The words sat between us like a stone. I know these things are important to you, I said carefully. I don't want to make it awkward. Rachel, it's a military ceremony, not a wedding. Just show up, smile, don't embarrass us. A pause. And maybe try to look presentable? These are David's colleagues. Important people. I looked down at my jeans and Georgetown hoodie, sitting in my small apartment in Alexandria with case files spread across my coffee table. Presentable. Right. I'll be there. I drove down to Fayetteville on Saturday morning, arriving at Fort Bragg an hour early. Old habits. The JSOC compound was as locked down as I remembered, multiple checkpoints, serious-faced sentries with serious weapons. My retired military ID got me through, though the young sergeant checking credentials did a double take at my surname. Ma'am, are you related to? I'm here for Major Chen's ceremony, I interrupted gently. He waved me through, but I caught him making a phone call as I drove past. The ceremony was being held in the main briefing auditorium, a room I knew intimately, though I'd never mentioned it to Victoria. I'd spent 300 hours in this room, maybe more, giving briefs, receiving taskings, planning operations that would never appear in any public record. I chose a seat in the back row, far right. Good sightlines to the exits. Force of habit. The room filled gradually with the kind of crowd you'd expect at a JSOC event, mostly military, heavy on special operations tabs and combat patches, with a few civilians mixed in. Contractors, probably. Or agency. I recognized the type because I'd been the type. Victoria arrived like she was walking a red carpet, David at her side looking sharp in his dress uniform. She'd always had that quality, the ability to command attention just by entering a room. Beautiful, confident, accomplished in her own right as a corporate attorney. She spotted me, and her smile tightened fractionally. Rachel, you came. She looked me over, my simple black dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a low bun. Well, you tried. Congratulations, David, I said, extending my hand. He shook it, firm but brief. Thanks. Glad you could make it. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. Victoria had clearly briefed him on the family disappointment. Big day, I offered. Biggest of my career so far. He smiled, proud. Oh, for a 32. Battalion S, 3 for a Ranger battalion. It's what I've worked toward my whole life. You should be proud. Someone has to serve with distinction, Victoria said, her voice light but pointed. Carry on the family tradition. I said nothing. Our father had been Army. Special Forces, retired as a lieutenant colonel. Victoria had made it clear years ago that my own service, quieter, classified, ending without visible glory, didn't measure up. They moved on to greet others. I stayed in my seat. The ceremony began with military precision. The JSOC deputy commander, a 3-star general named Harrison, whom I'd briefed exactly 17 times, presided. He spoke about excellence, about sacrifice, about the unique demands of special operations. Then came the promotions. David was third of 5 officers being advanced. He stood at attention as his new rank was pinned, as the oath was administered, as congratulations were offered. Before we conclude, General Harrison said, scanning the room, I want to acknowledge some special guests. His eyes found mine with laser precision. We have several family members here today, but one in particular I'd like to recognize. My stomach dropped. Ms. Rachel Chen, would you please stand? The room turned. Every head swiveled. Victoria's face went confused, then annoyed. I stood slowly, feeling 43 pairs of eyes assess me. Ma'am, Harrison said, his voice carrying weight. I didn't realize you'd be here today. If I had known, I would have. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Brothers and sisters, we have in our presence one of the finest intelligence officers JSOC has ever had the privilege of working with. Victoria's confusion deepened into something like alarm. The general's words hung in the air like cordite. I could see Victoria's mind working, trying to reconcile his statement with everything she believed about me. David had gone very still. Rachel Chen served with Naval Special Warfare Development Group as their senior targeting officer for 6 years. Harrison continued. Before that, she was with the intelligence support activity. Her work was instrumental in 17. He emphasized the number. 17 successful hostage rescues. Dozens of high-value target captures. Operations that changed the course of campaigns. I kept my face neutral, my hands at my sides. This wasn't how I'd wanted this to go. Sir, I said quietly, that's not necessary. On the contrary, ma'am, it's overdue. He looked at the assembled officers. How many of you have worked with Wraith? My call sign. My stomach tightened further. Hands went up. Slowly at first, then more. I counted 15 officers, SEALs, Rangers, Special Forces, Delta, all raising their hands. All acknowledging they'd worked with me, relied on my intelligence, trusted my assessments when lives were on the line. I didn't know her real name until today. A SEAL commander in the third row said, standing. But Wraith's target packages were gospel. Every detail perfect. Every assessment accurate. She kept my team alive in Yemen. Another officer stood. Iraq, 2015. My ODA was pinned down in Ramadi. Wraith talked us through enemy positions in real time. Told us exactly where to move, when to move. 0 casualties. A female Air Force officer rose. I flew CAS missions based on her ground intelligence. She had a reputation. If Wraith said a target was valid, it was valid. If she said civilians were present, we held fire. She was never wrong. Victoria's champagne flute trembled in her hand. She was staring at me like I was a stranger. In many ways, I suppose I was. There's more, Harrison said. He produced a folder, opened it. 2 years ago, Commander Chen was involved in an operation in Somalia. High-risk hostage rescue. American aid workers held by al-Shabaab. She was providing intelligence support from a forward operating base when the base came under attack. I closed my eyes briefly. I knew where this was going. Rather than evacuate, she remained at her station. Continued to provide real-time intelligence to the assault force even as rounds impacted her building. She was wounded, shrapnel from an RPG, but stayed on comms until the hostages were secured and the assault team was safely extracted. Sir, I started. She required 18 stitches and 3 months of physical therapy. She was recommended for the Bronze Star with V device. The recommendation was denied because the operation was classified, and any public award would compromise operational security. He looked directly at me. But the recommendation is still in your file, Commander. And everyone in this room who knows what DevGr does, who knows what the activity does, understands what that means. The silence was profound. David found his voice first. Commander? Rachel, you told us you were a communication specialist. You said you worked in an office at Dam Neck. I did work at Dam Neck, I said. The Naval Special Warfare Development Group is headquartered at Dam Neck. He said you pushed paperwork. He said it was boring. I said it was classified. You interpreted that as boring. Victoria was shaking her head slowly. No, this doesn't make sense. You left the Navy with nothing to show for it. No awards, no recognition. You didn't even have a change of command ceremony. Because I was never in command of anything public, I said. My work was compartmented. My retirement was processed through a classified personnel office. There was no ceremony because there couldn't be a ceremony. You let us think you'd failed, Victoria whispered. I let you think what you wanted to think. What you needed to think. I kept my voice level. When I came home after getting wounded, you asked if I'd gotten hurt in a training accident. I said, yes, that was true. JSOC calls combat operations training for security purposes. When I told you I was getting out, you said it was probably for the best since I'd never really distinguished myself. I didn't correct you. Why not? David demanded. Why let us believe? Because I'd signed non-disclosure agreements that carried federal penalties. Because the people I worked with operated in countries we're not officially in, doing things we don't officially do. Because my pride mattered less than their safety. I looked at Victoria. And because you'd already decided who I was. Correcting you would have meant arguing with you. And I was too tired to argue. General Harrison stepped forward. If I may, what Commander Chen isn't telling you is that her work directly enabled the operation that killed Qasim al-Rahman. I heard sharp intakes of breath. Al-Rahman had been the number 2 in Al-Qaeda, killed in a drone strike in Pakistan 3 years ago. The operation had been front-page news for a week. She spent 11 months tracking his network. She identified his courier. She predicted his movement patterns. When we got the signal intelligence indicating his location, it was Commander Chen who confirmed the target, who built the pattern of life assessment, who gave the final recommendation to strike. Harrison's voice was quiet, but it carried. That operation saved American lives. Potentially hundreds of them. Victoria sat down heavily in the nearest chair. Her face had gone pale. There's a tradition in the special operations community, Harrison continued. When we encounter someone who has served with extraordinary distinction in classified roles, someone whose service can't be publicly honored but deserves recognition nonetheless, we offer a silent salute. A moment of respect between professionals. He came to attention, raised his hand to his brow. One by one, every officer in the room stood and followed suit. I stood in that field of silent respect. 43 special operators acknowledging years of service, they understood, even if they couldn't speak about it publicly. The weight of their recognition settled over me like a familiar coat. Heavy, earned, bittersweet. I returned the salute, holding it until General Harrison dropped his hand. The room followed, a coordinated movement that spoke to years of discipline. Thank you, sir, I managed. And thank you all. It was an honor to serve with you. The honor was ours, ma'am, the SEAL commander said. The ceremony concluded shortly after. Officers approached me, some to shake my hand, others to share brief stories about operations we'd supported together. They spoke in careful euphemisms, mindful of the civilians present, but I understood every reference. The village in Cunard, the compound in Mosul, the safe house in Benghazi. Victoria stood apart, watching. David had moved to her side, speaking quietly, but she seemed not to hear him. Finally, as the crowd thinned, she approached me. I don't understand, she said. Her voice was small, uncertain, unfamiliar emotions from my confident older sister. Why didn't you tell me? Tell Dad before he died. I tried. The words came out gentler than I expected. Remember when I made lieutenant? I called Dad. I told him I'd been selected for an important assignment. He said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to talking about your law school acceptances. But you could have insisted. You could have made him understand. How? By violating security protocols? By compromising operations? I shook my head. Dad served. He understood classification. If he'd asked the right questions, I would have found ways to help him understand. But he didn't ask. Neither did you. Because you acted like it didn't matter. You came home for holidays and sat quietly and never talked about work. Because I legally couldn't talk about work. And because every time I tried to redirect conversation to my life, you redirected it back to yours. Your cases, your promotions, your accomplishments. I wasn't angry, just stating facts. You needed me to be the lesser sister. The one who tried and didn't quite succeed. It made your success feel bigger. Victoria flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? You introduced me at Dad's funeral as your sister, who was in the Navy for a while. Past tense. Dismissive. You told your law partners I'd had an unremarkable military career. You told David I was the family disappointment. David had the grace to look ashamed. I didn't know, Victoria whispered. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. I softened my voice. Look, I understand. Dad was special forces. He had a standard. You thought I didn't meet it because I wasn't jumping out of airplanes or kicking down doors. But special operations is a machine with many parts. Operators get the glory because their part is visible. My part wasn't. General Harrison had been hovering at a respectful distance. He approached now, carrying a small wooden box. Commander Chen, I took the liberty of having something prepared when I learned you'd be here. He opened the box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a JSOC coin, the kind given for exceptional service. But this one was unique, engraved with my call sign and dates of service. This is unofficial, he said. It won't go in any record. But the men and women in this room wanted you to have something tangible. Something that says we remember. We appreciate. We honor your service. I took the coin carefully. The metal was warm from his hands. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay in touch. The community takes care of its own, even after retirement. You have brothers and sisters here. He glanced at Victoria. Your family should know that. The family you chose, and the family you were born to. After he left, Victoria and I stood in silence. David had drifted away, giving us space. I'm sorry, she finally said. I'm sorry I didn't see you. I'm sorry I didn't ask better questions. I'm sorry I made assumptions. I'm sorry I let you, I replied. I could have pushed harder. I was just tired. Tired of trying to prove myself. Tired of feeling like I had to justify my choices. Were you happy? In the Navy? I considered the question. Happy is complicated. Proud, yes. Fulfilled, absolutely. I did work that mattered. I was good at it. People trusted me with their lives, and I didn't let them down. I met her eyes. That's not nothing, Victoria. No, she agreed quietly. That's everything. We left the building together, walking into the late afternoon sun. David joined us, subdued but thoughtful. Rachel, he said, I want to apologize too. I bought into Victoria's narrative without questioning it. That was wrong. You didn't know me. You only knew what you were told. Still, I'm a field-grade officer in an organization that depends on intelligence professionals like you. I should have understood that service takes many forms. We reached my car. Victoria touched my arm before I could open the door. Can we start over? She asked. I want to know you, the real you, as much as you're allowed to share. I'd like that, I said honestly. Sunday dinners? Every other week? You can tell me about Georgetown. You never mentioned you were doing graduate work there. International security policy, I said. Seemed relevant given the background. She laughed, a little watery. I have 17 years of big sister assumptions to unlearn. Be patient with me. If you'll be patient with me. I'm not used to talking about myself. Deal. I drove back to Alexandria as the sun set, the JSOC coin in my pocket, Victoria's number programmed into my phone with a dinner date for next Sunday already scheduled. The apartment was dark when I arrived, my case files still scattered on the coffee table, threat assessments for a think tank, sanitized versions of the analysis I used to do. Boring, Victoria would have called it once. Important, I knew it to be. I placed the coin on my bookshelf, next to the photo of my DevGr team. Faces blurred for security, but smiles genuine. People who knew me, who valued me, who understood. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Proud of you. Should have said it years ago. Saying it now. I typed back. Thank you. See you Sunday. Some things couldn't be recovered. Years of misunderstanding, my father's lost recognition, time I'd spent feeling invisible to my own family. But some things could be built new. Tentative bridges. Careful conversations. A relationship based on truth instead of assumption. I opened my laptop, pulled up the latest briefing request for my consulting work. The words came easily, precisely, backed by years of training and instinct. Some people needed spotlights to feel seen. I'd learned to thrive in shadows and found my light in purpose. That, I had learned today, was more than enough. End.